Hey, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, I would love to do more videos simply because of the demand to do videos on relationships, because so many of the people that write to me, and I do have a lot of people write to me. In fact, while I'm on the subject, I should really apologize that if I don't get around to responding to you, because I do like to respond, but sometimes if I don't respond immediately, then it can slip between the cracks. So please send me a reminder and I will respond, I promise. But I wanted to do this because so many people really want to know. They've made up their mind for whatever their reasons are. Everybody has their own personal reasons for wanting to leave the country that they're in. Right now I get a lot of letters, messages, private messages on Messenger and email about leaving America if certain conditions start to unfold there. If it had been Trump who was actually finally re-elected, then there could have been a lot of violence. It had been threatened. It's still quite a risky situation, but that wasn't really the subject of the video. What I really wanted to talk about was the differences in culture and how they manifest between a foreigner and a Filipino. Now, so what are the deal breakers? Well, something that starts off as being quite cute may end up as a deal breaker, because you can't. It's very difficult to allow for the fact that you are now in your situation. Let's build the situation saying that you are a foreigner from wherever you're from. You've made up your mind and you've met a lovely lady and you moved out to the province. Now, I say the province because that's what I know about, because that's where I've lived for 6 or 7, well, close on 7 years now. So what is it that could be a deal breaker? Well, when you get here, so much of it is magical, and it is. Not for everybody. Now, the chances are that I've heard of one guy coming over from Cebu, which Cebu is actually one of the wealthiest places in the Philippines. It's an extremely wealthy place. It's very, very well placed because you can get to so many different places from Cebu and have really quite a varied and interesting life there. I choose not to live in Cebu. It's still a big city, and as such has all of those aspects of living in a big city which I don't particularly like. So I choose to live in the province, and the province is much, much more laid back, but there's an element of isolation which could be a deal breaker for some people. Now, you could say, well, if you lived in Cebu, you would have access to any number of friends who are foreigners like yourself, and that would be very true, and that would be something that you would have to decide on yourself. For me, I haven't found that it's an automatic friendship just because somebody else is a foreigner. You think about the chances of this occurring and resulting in a great friendship, just on the off chance that someone from the country that you come from someone who is American or British, and you're going to be great friends. No guarantees, really no guarantees. Plus, people, including myself, bring with them certain baggage. I used to see ads, ads in the personals in America, and some lady, some very attractive lady, would be saying, want someone who is this height and this weight and this bank account, no baggage. I used to think then, wow, good luck on finding someone who has no baggage, because life is a series of pieces of baggage, and we carry them with us, and the degree of happiness that we feel is dependent very much on how we handle that baggage, but it's still there. All of my experiences, I had 8.5 years 8.5 years in a life that I really didn't like. I was in the army, but the only saving grace was I was a musician, not a soldier. So I was a bandsman, and because of that, music was the thing that saved my life, spiritually speaking. See, so even then, it was a life that I really didn't like. Now, you can imagine that I brought quite a bit of baggage with me because of that 8.5 years, and there's been a lot more periods of 8.5 years in my life, believe me. So you're going to come with certain baggage, and that's going to interfere with you having friendships, or it will have a great deal of bearing on the quality of the friendships that you have, depending on what the other person is carrying and what you are carrying, and how the two meet. Do they gel like this or not? So, given that, and that you are handling that as well as it can be handled, as well as anybody can handle it. Now, if you're in the province, it may be that you are now committed to a relationship with someone who nevertheless is a city person. In my particular case, I'm not married to a city person. She is not in any shape or form to be regarded as a city person. She is an island girl, and she is from a special part of the community which is in the mountains. So not only is she not a city girl, and therefore all of the conditioning that a city person has, like for me, I'm a city person, but I've adapted very well and very happily to being in the mountains and living a life of comparative isolation. But I had a great deal of training in that in my former lives. I think of it like that. All of those 8.5 year periods are my former lives. There's more to reincarnation than you might think. So I've learned to be self-contained, and therefore I don't perhaps feel the same degree of isolation that someone else might feel who is a very, say, gregarious person and enjoys the company of large groups of people. Well, you can have the company of large groups of people, but one of the stipulations will be that you have to speak the language, and I don't. So I've had to adapt in other ways, and you will have that challenge. You'll have to adapt. So what form do they take? I wrote down a couple of things which actually are very funny when it's happening to you. Okay, well, maybe not so funny when it's happening to you, but just things in the language and in body language as well. For instance, children will be very shy with you, and so you will have to be able to, your radar will have to be fine-tuned for yes and no. So you ask, we have an 8-year-old come in, and I ask her, would you like some apple? And I'll chop some apple up into slices, and we'll sit and eat the apple together. Beth and I welcome the company of children, and so I will try to have a conversation. Very, very difficult. When I first came here 7 years ago, unofficially I adopted a child who is part of our extended family. She is Beth's niece, so it was as if I adopted Taliklik. Her father had died, and I stepped in and I became Daddy Terence. So even up to now, 7 years later, I still don't have conversations with Taliklik. It will be all like this. What my friend Dean calls the dancing eyebrows. The dancing eyebrows are the most subtle thing, especially in a small child. Now, the small child that comes in now, she actually looks 5 years old, but she has been declared long before we ever met to be a malnourished child, and now we're making sure that she gets as much food as she wants, hence the apples. So the signs of yes and no for a little kid are really very subtle. The child will look at you and the face will be impassive, except for, so would you like an apple? That's as loud a yes as you're gonna get. Are you sure you'd like an apple? What I call the upside down nod. Normally, in the West, you know, if you ask a kid, so, would you like an apple? Yeah. Down, yes. Here, yes. Upside down nod. If somebody beckons to you and they want you to come over to them, you see, I'm a foreigner, did you notice that I did this? This is, come here. No, in the Philippines, it's this. So, and it's the strangest thing to get used to. Very strange. And this is like the tip of the iceberg. So if you say, there's no past, present and future tense, or in very little use. If they are, they've got cobwebs on them in a corner somewhere because they're not being used. So if you say to someone, did you go to the store? You know, if you were expecting them to go to the store, or maybe a phone call is the best thing to do, best way to express it. Did you call Joe? Oh, maybe Joe's not a great one. Huh? Did you call Harry? Yes. So, you did call Harry? What did you say? I'm going to call him. See? So I'll call him now. Past, present and future. If you ask someone in foreign land, wherever you're from, and you ask them, did you call? Ah, no, I didn't call. I haven't called yet. I'm going to call now. See? Didn't call. Past tense. Going to call now. Present tense. Or I'll call him in a minute. I'll call him at 12 o'clock. Future tense. Past, present, future. And they are very much alive and well in the West. But because English is not a first language, then it's not as common here. So you have to get used to that. The other is he and she. That for some reason, remembering gender is difficult. So this will drive you completely insane if you come in late and there's a movie on and they are very interested in the movie. Like Beth is very interested in the movie, and she will say, this is a great movie, you know. What's happened is that the wife of the brother is now in love with the cousin of the, and it goes like this. But then once they start into it, they start mixing up the he and the she. So she said to her wife, is that he said to his wife? Yes. So what happened then? No. Which is it? Both. And it goes into this twilight zone of language mix-up and match. That was some of the other things that I put. I've said you must speak the language. You must speak the language, because if you don't speak the language, there's all of this is going on. I sit at dinner every night. I sit at dinner with the family, and I sit with I think it's 8 women. 8 women. When I say women, obviously, let me see, 4 of them or 5 of them are children. So, but they're all girls. And then there's my mother-in-law, and then there's Vek, who helps my mother-in-law, and she has dinner with us at the same time. And there's Beth. And then there's 4 or sometimes 5 children. And there's all of this animated conversation that's going on around, and you are not part of any of that. And even though they can, all of them can speak a limited amount of English. A lot more than your Visayan anyway, that's for sure, or than my Visayan. So you become isolated by that. Well, that's your choice. To feel isolated is your choice. I don't feel isolated. Like occasionally I'll butt in and say, what happened? And they'll tell me. But if you've ever had a Filipina translate for you, you'll know that it's not their superpower. Believe me, it's not. So they may speak over and over and over, more and more and more, and now and more and this and more and that and that and that and that and this. What did he say? He said he doesn't want to. He took 5 or 6 minutes to say that he didn't want. Yes. And then yes and no is the other thing. Sometimes they say yes when they mean no. Sometimes they say no when they mean yes. And you are caught in the middle. Now, if you don't have what I've been talking about the ability to be self-contained, that you can be in trouble. You really can be in trouble. Now, the other thing is that many expats, many foreigners come to this country, and they may be extremely accomplished people, accomplished men who are in, what can we say, maybe not the winter of their lives, but certainly they might be in the fall or the autumn of their lives, and they're accomplished. Some of them have got several careers, successful careers behind them, and they're coming here, and while they may not always be rich enough to be able to live in their own country, like for me, I certainly was not able to live on the money that I have coming in pensions. I couldn't live comfortably in America. It just wasn't enough. So I opted, you know, in what I think was a very logical way, I opted for going and traveling in a country where the exchange rate was, what is it at the moment? It can be as high as 51 pesos to the dollar. Wow, boy, you're getting good value for your money when you're doing that. See, so you come over with this in mind, and you come over and you immediately see that this is very much a simpler way of living. Very much simple. And to give you an idea, the house that my mother-in-law had lived in, was living in when we arrived, was, I think when she first moved in with Beth's mother, with Beth, I'm getting my gender mixed up now, when she first moved to the hill with Beth's father, they lived in a tiny house that he almost threw together in a week so they could live there, and then he built the house that she was living in when I arrived. Now, we've since knocked that house down and built her a new house, but she was living and had been living there for 48 years. Now, she didn't have running water. When we arrived, there was no running water. We used to walk. There were two wells, one that way and one this way. We used to bathe in this one, walk, you know, maybe, I don't know, a couple of kilometers, or if that. It seemed like a quarter mile to me. So whatever that relates to or translates to in kilometers, I don't know. But we used to walk there, and we would bathe with a certain amount of clothing on, which is the Philippine way, by an open well, and that's where we bathed every day. Now, the other well was a covered-in well where we could get clean drinking water, and I drank from that well for the first several years. It was only a couple of years ago that we started to get bottled water. So that was how I moved here. We, just prior to moving, we'd paid to have, as part of a program that was under the then president of the Philippines, I've forgotten who it was now, Pinoy, Aquino. It was Aquino, President Aquino, and he had instigated this thing, a program for getting everybody on electricity. So there was electricity available, and we paid, and for a few weeks before we got here, there was electricity. So at least that was on, but still very primitive. The house was very primitive, tin roof. Well, we've got a tin roof now, and it was different. Don't ask me why I was able to adjust to that, but I took to that. I was relieved. I'd been living very simply in Fort Myers anyway, because I'd lost my house, and I moved into, back then I moved into what was little more than like a warehouse, and I had a room in there which I made civilized. I drywalled it all and done what I needed to do to make it comfortable. But it was primitive. So I guess it wasn't such a stretch for me to move in and live like we do now. In fact, we moved to building a house when we'd been here for not much more than about 6 months, I don't think, and we couldn't live in the open plan type of style of house that Nanai had. The wall goes up, it goes up so far and then it doesn't go up any further, so everything is open on the top of every wall. Not a good idea for a marriage. So we built a house and moved in, and it was quite primitive too. We had very little electricity. We did have electricity, but it was down to just a few outlets. And it's only very recently, in the last year, that we've made it civilized. You can see, if I just swivel the camera around, you can have a look. So we're quite civilized now. There's upstairs into the bedroom. Berta's gone to bed. You can see there. And it is actually, it is nice. It is nice. It's comfortable, but it's still no palace. Believe me. Where am I? Back again. See, so we had our little challenges. Deal breakers. One may be a deal breaker for you, may not be a deal breaker for me, and vice versa. You need to learn to be self-contained. I think this is the most valid piece of advice that you can have. You can't come here, no matter how accomplished you are, you can't come here and change the Philippines. It's not going to happen. You certainly may come here and maintain a certain kind of difference of behaviour in the lady that you marry, but it won't be a comfortable change, and she will find her own ways of retaining her own sense of person. She'll continue to be her own person, and this sometimes can be a deal breaker for some foreigners, that there is such a thing that most agree exists, called tempo, and tempo is a particular kind of behavior which is based on a mood. You won't know what it is a lot of the time, and if you are unfortunate to get someone who likes to do the tempo thing, then you could pay some dues, if you understand me. So even though it's not politically correct to talk about this and to name it, in fact, the more that you see that other people have moods, the more that you are forced to understand and accept that you yourself are not without moods. So there's a lot of adjustment to be made, and a lot of it is very, very good if you can cope with it, if you can adapt to the way, if you can find a way to come to terms with the difference. See, here's the thing, no matter how much change you bring to the environment, you're still the foreigner, and you always will be the foreigner. And that's your number one challenge, is coming to terms with that, being happy with it, and still being happy with those around you who are not foreigners. If you can't do that, I would say that that's probably going to be a deal breaker. Thanks for looking in. I hope it helps. Bye for now.